The evening rush enveloped the city bus like a wave of exhaustion. Sarah Chen pressed herself against the window, her scrubs still damp with the sweat of a 12-hour shift at Mercy General Hospital. Her feet throbbed inside her worn sneakers, and the familiar ache in her lower back reminded her of the countless patients she had helped turn, lift, and comfort throughout the day. The bus lurched forward and she gripped the overhead rail tighter, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light for just a moment. It was her mother's ring, the only piece of jewelry she had left after the accident 3 years ago. Sarah touched it unconsciously, a habit that brought her comfort on difficult days. The doors hissed open at the next stop, and a wave of commuters pushed their way inside. Among them, Sarah noticed a young woman moving slowly, one hand supporting her swollen belly, the other clutching a plastic bag from the dollar store. The woman's face was pale, her forehead glistening with perspiration despite the October chill that crept through the open doors. She looked around desperately for an empty seat, but the bus was packed with people too absorbed in their phones or too tired to notice. Sarah felt her own exhaustion pulling at her like an anchor, but she couldn't ignore the woman's struggle. She stood up, legs protesting the movement, and gestured to her seat. "Please," Sarah said softly, her voice barely audible over the engine's rumble and the chatter of passengers. "You need this more than I do." The pregnant woman looked up, surprise evident in her dark eyes. "Are you sure? You look like you've had a long day too." Sarah smiled, though fatigue made the expression feel heavy. "I'm fine, really. How far along are you?" 7 months, the woman replied, sinking gratefully into the seat. "Twins, actually. The doctor says I need to stay off my feet as much as possible, but I had to pick up some supplies for the nursery. My partner's working a double shift." She paused, her eyes welling up slightly. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. You're very kind." Sarah shook her head. "Don't apologize. I work in labor and delivery, so I understand. Take care of yourself and those babies. They're lucky to have a mom who's already thinking about them so much." The woman's face brightened, despite her obvious discomfort. "Thank you. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that today. I've been so scared, you know? First-time mom, and twins on top of it. Sometimes I wonder if I'm going to be any good at this." "You're already doing great," Sarah assured her, gripping the rail as the bus rounded a corner. "The fact that you're worried about it means you care. That's what matters most." The pregnant woman reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. "Please, let me give you something, for your kindness." Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "Absolutely not. Just promise me you'll rest when you get home, and drink plenty of water. Your ankles will thank you." "I promise," the woman said, tucking the money back into her purse. "What's your name? I'd like to remember who helped me today." "Sarah. Sarah Chen." "I'm Rebecca Torres. I won't forget this, Sarah, or you." The bus pulled to Sarah's stop, and she prepared to squeeze through the crowded aisle. "Take care, Rebecca. You're going to be an amazing mother." As Sarah stepped off the bus into the cool evening air, she felt a small sense of satisfaction despite her exhaustion. It was a tiny moment of connection in a city that often felt isolating, a brief reminder that kindness still mattered. She walked the 3 blocks to her apartment building, her mind already turning to the simple dinner she would make and the blessed relief of taking off her shoes. She climbed the 2 flights of stairs to her apartment, fumbling with her keys at the door. Inside, the familiar quiet greeted her. Since her mother's death, the silence had felt heavier, more oppressive. She dropped her bag on the kitchen counter and moved to the sink to wash her hands, a habit so ingrained that she barely thought about it anymore. It was only when she reached for the hand towel that she noticed. Her left hand felt lighter, wrong somehow. Sarah looked down and felt her heart stop. The ring was gone. Her mother's ring. The delicate gold band with the small sapphire that had sat on her mother's finger for 30 years before it came to her. It wasn't there. She checked her right hand, knowing it was pointless. She always wore it on her left ring finger. Always. Sarah ran back to her bag, dumping its contents onto the counter. Stethoscope, name badge, chapstick, protein bar wrapper, hand sanitizer. No ring. She checked every pocket of her scrubs, ran her hands through her hair in case it had somehow gotten tangled there, retraced her steps from the door to the kitchen and back again. Nothing. Sarah sank onto the couch, her mind racing through the day. When had she last noticed it? She touched it on the bus, she was certain. Or was she? The memory felt fuzzy now, uncertain. Had it been that morning before work? She tried to remember the sensation of twisting it absently during her shift, her nervous habit when dealing with difficult patients or worried families. But the more she tried to recall, the less certain she became. She called the hospital, spoke to the housekeeping supervisor, who promised to check the staff locker room, and the nurses' station. She described the ring in detail, her voice shaking. It was my mother's. She died 3 years ago. It's all I have left of her. I understand, the supervisor said gently. We'll look everywhere. If someone turns it in to lost and found, I'll call you immediately. Sarah thanked her and hung up, but the hollow feeling in her chest only grew. She thought about calling the bus company, but what would she say? She didn't know which bus she'd been on exactly, or what time. It all blurred together in her exhaustion. And even if she did report it, what were the chances someone would find it on that crowded bus and turn it in? People lost things in the city every day. They rarely got them back. She sat in the dark apartment, too tired to cry, too upset to sleep. The ring had been more than jewelry. It had been her connection to her mother, to the woman who had raised her alone after her father left, who had worked 2 jobs to put her through nursing school, who had told her on her deathbed, "Wear this and remember that you're never alone. I'll always be with you." Now it was gone, and Sarah felt more alone than she had in 3 years. The weeks that followed blurred into months, and the months into years. Sarah continued her work at Mercy General, throwing herself into her shifts with an intensity that her colleagues noticed but didn't question. She picked up extra hours, volunteered for the most challenging cases, stayed late to help new nurses learn the ropes. Work became her refuge, the place where she could focus on others' needs and forget, for a while, about her own loss. She never stopped thinking about the ring, though. It haunted her in quiet moments, a ghost of guilt and grief that she couldn't quite shake. She had failed her mother in the simplest way possible. She had lost the one physical token of their bond. Sometimes, in her darker moments, Sarah wondered if the universe was punishing her for something, taking away the thing she cherished most, as some cosmic lesson she couldn't understand. 4 years after that October evening, Sarah found herself facing a different kind of crisis. The hospital was undergoing massive restructuring. Budget cuts meant layoffs, and the nursing staff was being evaluated with a scrutiny that felt more threatening than professional. Sarah had always been a good nurse, dedicated and competent, but lately she felt herself slipping. The exhaustion had become chronic, the emotional toll of the job harder to bear. She made small mistakes, forgot to file paperwork on time, snapped at a colleague who didn't deserve it. Her supervisor, a stern woman named Margaret, who had worked at Mercy General for 30 years, called her into her office one frigid January morning. The heating system had broken down over the weekend, and the office felt barely warmer than the outside air. Margaret sat behind her desk, reading glasses perched on her nose, a file open in front of her. "Sarah, sit down." Sarah obeyed, her heart pounding. She knew what was coming. "I'm concerned about your performance," Margaret began without preamble. "You've been an excellent nurse for years, but in the last 6 months, I've noticed a decline. You seem distracted, overwhelmed. 3 incident reports have been filed. Nothing serious, but it's not like you. Talk to me." "What's going on?" Sarah wanted to explain. She wanted to say that she was drowning, that the job had slowly consumed every part of her until there was nothing left but the work and the exhaustion. She wanted to talk about her mother, about the ring, about how sometimes she felt like she was just going through the motions of life without really living it. But the words stuck in her throat. "I'm just tired," she said finally. "I'll do better, I promise." Margaret studied her for a long moment, her expression softening slightly. "Sarah, I'm not trying to threaten you. I'm worried about you. You're an asset to this hospital, but you're burning out. I can see it. When was the last time you took a real vacation, or saw a doctor yourself?" "I'm fine," Sarah insisted, though they both knew it was a lie. "I'm putting you on probation for 90 days, Margaret said quietly. "I don't want to, but I have to document this. Use this time to figure out what you need. Talk to someone. Take some days off, whatever it takes. But you can't keep going like this. It's not sustainable, and eventually, it's going to affect patient care." "I can't let that happen." Sarah nodded numbly, unable to speak. She left the office feeling like she was walking underwater, everything distant and muffled. Probation. In 15 years of nursing, she had never been reprimanded, never been anything less than exemplary. Now, at 41, she was being told she wasn't good enough anymore. The rest of the day passed in a haze. She went through her duties mechanically, checking vitals, administering medications, updating charts. Her hands knew what to do, even when her mind felt disconnected. During her lunch break, she sat in the staff cafeteria, staring at a sandwich she couldn't bring herself to eat. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the smell of industrial cleaning solution mixed with old coffee made her stomach turn. "Rough day?" Sarah looked up to find one of the newer nurses, a young woman named Jessica, standing beside her table. Jessica was 25, fresh out of school, and still possessed the enthusiasm that Sarah vaguely remembered having once. "You could say that," Sarah replied, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Want to talk about it?" Sarah shook her head. "Not really, but thank you." Jessica hesitated, then sat down anyway. "I know it's not my place, but I wanted to tell you that you're the reason I'm still here. When I started 6 months ago, I was so overwhelmed I almost quit after my first week. You stayed late to help me organize my patient charts, remember? You showed me shortcuts, gave me advice, made me feel like I could actually do this job. I haven't forgotten that." Sarah felt something crack in her chest, a small fissure in the wall she had built around herself. "I'm glad I could help," she said quietly. "You help everyone," Jessica continued. "I see the way you talk to patients, how you remember little details about their lives, how you advocate for them when doctors aren't listening. You're the kind of nurse I want to be. So whatever you're going through right now, just know that you're appreciated. You make a difference." After Jessica left, Sarah sat alone with her uneaten sandwich and felt tears prick at her eyes for the first time in months. She had been so focused on her own failures, her own loss, that she had forgotten why she became a nurse in the first place. Not for recognition or even personal satisfaction, but to help people when they were at their most vulnerable, to be the presence that made a difficult experience slightly more bearable. That evening, as her shift neared its end, Sarah found herself in the supply room, restocking the medication cart for the night shift. It was mindless work, the kind that let her thoughts wander. She was counting out packages of sterile gauze when she heard footsteps behind her. "Excuse me, are you Sarah Chen?" Sarah turned to find a woman in her mid-30s standing in the doorway. She wore scrubs with the Mercy General logo, but Sarah didn't recognize her. The woman was petite, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and warm brown eyes that studied Sarah with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" The woman smiled, and there was something familiar about it, though Sarah couldn't place what. "I'm Elena Torres. I just started in the cardiology unit last week. I've been hoping to run into you." "Have we met before?" Sarah asked, though she was certain they hadn't. "Not exactly," Elena said, "but my mother has talked about you for years." Sarah's confusion must have shown on her face because Elena laughed softly. "Sorry, I'm not explaining this well. My mother is Rebecca Torres. About 4 years ago, you gave her your seat on a bus when she was pregnant with me and my sister. She was having a really hard day, scared out of her mind about becoming a mom, and you were kind to her. You told her she was going to be a great mother. The memory came back to Sarah in a rush, fuzzy around the edges, but definitely there. The crowded bus, the exhausted pregnant woman, the brief conversation that had felt significant at the time. I remember, Sarah said slowly. How is she? How are you? We're good, Elena said, her smile widening. My sister Lucia and I are both healthy. Mom talks about that day all the time. She says you gave her confidence when she needed it most. She actually named you as one of her inspirations when she went back to school and became a social worker. She wanted to help people the way you helped her. Sarah felt overwhelmed, unable to process this information. A simple act of kindness, giving up a seat on a bus, had meant that much. I'm so glad to hear that, she managed. But I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have done the same. That's not true, though, Elena said gently. People walk past each other every day without seeing each other. You saw my mother. You treated her with compassion when she was at a low point. That matters. Sarah swallowed hard, fighting back the emotion rising in her throat. Thank you for telling me this. It means more than you know, especially today. Elena tilted her head, studying Sarah more closely. Are you okay? You seem... I'm fine, Sarah said automatically, then caught herself. Actually, I'm not fine. I'm having a rough time at work. At life, really. Some days it feels like nothing I do makes a difference. I understand that feeling, Elena said. But for what it's worth, you made a difference to my family. And I'm guessing you've made a difference to countless others. She paused, seeming to make a decision. Actually, there's another reason I wanted to find you. I have something that belongs to you. Sarah watched as Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out a small cloth bag. She opened it carefully and extracted something that glinted in the fluorescent light. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It was her ring, her mother's ring. How? Sarah couldn't form a complete sentence. She reached out with a trembling hand, hardly daring to believe it was real. Elena placed the ring gently in Sarah's palm. My mother found it on the bus that night. It was on the floor near the seat you gave her. She knew it must be important because of the way you touched it when you were talking to her. She tried to catch you, but you had already gotten off. She took it to the bus company's lost and found the next day, and when no one claimed it after 6 months, they returned it to her. She kept it all these years, hoping she'd find you somehow. Sarah stared at the ring in her hand, the familiar weight of it, the small sapphire that had been her mother's pride. Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't try to stop them. I thought it was gone forever. I've spent 4 years thinking I'd lost the only thing I had left of my mother. I know, Elena said softly. Mom tried to find you, but she only knew your first name and that you worked at a hospital. She called a few places but never got anywhere. When I told her I was starting at Mercy General, she made me promise to look for you. She described you so specifically that I was pretty sure I'd recognize you if I saw you. Sarah slipped the ring back onto her finger where it belonged, and something inside her that had been broken for 4 years suddenly felt whole again. Why did your mother keep it all this time? She could have sold it or just thrown it away. Elena smiled. Because you showed her kindness when you didn't have to. She said it was a reminder that good people exist, that small acts of generosity matter. She wanted to return that kindness if she ever got the chance. And now, here we are. Sarah pulled Elena into a hug, not caring that they barely knew each other, not caring about professional boundaries or hospital protocol. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me. When they pulled apart, both women were crying. Elena laughed and wiped her eyes. Mom is going to be so happy. Can I give her your number? She'd love to see you to catch up properly. Yes, absolutely, Sarah said. She fumbled for her phone and they exchanged contact information. Please tell her thank you from me. Tell her she raised an incredible daughter. 2 incredible daughters, Elena corrected with a grin. Lucia's in medical school, actually. She wants to be a pediatrician. As Elena left to finish her shift, Sarah stood alone in the supply room, turning the ring on her finger the way she used to, feeling its familiar presence. She thought about the impossible chain of events that had led to this moment. A stranger keeping a lost ring for 4 years. That stranger's daughter happening to work at the same hospital. Their paths crossing on the very day Sarah needed hope most. It wasn't magic or destiny or any of the mystical things people like to attribute to such occurrences. It was simply human kindness, paying itself forward across time. Sarah had helped a frightened mother on a difficult day, and years later, that mother's daughter had helped her in return. It was the kind of beautiful symmetry that life occasionally offered, a reminder that nothing we do is as small as it seems in the moment. Sarah finished restocking the cart and walked back to the nurse's station with a lighter step than she'd had in months. She thought about Margaret's words, about burnout and sustainability and taking care of herself. Maybe it was time to actually listen. Maybe it was time to remember why she became a nurse, to reconnect with the compassion that had driven her to this profession in the first place. She looked down at her hand, at her mother's ring, and thought about what her mother would say if she were here. She would tell Sarah to be kinder to herself, to remember that she was human and allowed to struggle. She would remind her that strength wasn't about never falling down. It was about getting back up. And most importantly, she would tell her that she was never alone, that love and kindness created connections that transcended time and space, that every good thing we put into the world had a way of coming back to us when we needed it most. The next morning, Sarah called Rebecca Torres. They met for coffee at a small cafe near the hospital, and Sarah was surprised to see how much the nervous pregnant woman from the bus had transformed. Rebecca was confident now, put together, with the bearing of someone who had found her purpose. With her were 2 beautiful 18-year-old girls, Elena and Lucia, identical twins with their mother's warm eyes and bright smiles. "I can't believe it's really you," Rebecca said, gripping Sarah's hand across the table. "I've thought about you so many times over the years. That day on the bus, I was at such a low point. I was scared, alone, questioning every decision I'd made. And then you showed me such simple, genuine kindness. It reminded me that the world had good in it, that people could be caring without expecting anything in return." "You kept my ring for 4 years," Sarah said, still marveling at the fact. "You didn't even know me." "I knew enough," Rebecca replied. "I knew you were the kind of person who gives up her seat when she's exhausted, who takes the time to encourage a stranger, who wears a ring that clearly means the world to her. I couldn't let that go. I had to try to find you, to return something that important." They talked for 2 hours, sharing their lives, their struggles, their triumphs. Sarah learned that Rebecca had not only become a social worker, but had founded a non-profit that helped first-time mothers in difficult circumstances, providing support, resources, and encouragement. "You inspired that," Rebecca said. "You showed me that a few kind words can change someone's entire day, their entire perspective. I wanted to do that for others." Sarah told them about her own struggles, about the burnout, the probation, the feeling of losing herself in the work. She talked about her mother, about what the ring meant, about how losing it had felt like losing the last connection to her past. "But you didn't lose it," Elena pointed out. "It was just taking a detour. It needed to travel through time and space to get back to you when you needed it most." Sarah laughed, a real laugh that felt foreign but wonderful. "That's a beautiful way to think about it." As they said their goodbyes and promised to stay in touch, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The weight she'd been carrying for 4 years, the guilt and grief and exhaustion, didn't disappear, but it became manageable. She realized that she had been so focused on what she had lost that she forgot to see what she still had. The ability to make a difference, the connections she formed with patients and colleagues, the kindness that flowed through even the hardest days. Over the following months, Sarah made changes. She cut back on her overtime, started seeing a therapist, joined a yoga class that met on Sunday mornings. She remained friends with Rebecca and her family, attending Lucia's medical school graduation party, and even babysitting Rebecca's new foster children on occasion. She found joy in her work again, not because it was easy or because the problems had gone away, but because she remembered why it mattered. The ring stayed on her finger, a constant reminder. But now it represented more than just her mother's memory. It symbolized the interconnectedness of human kindness, the way small acts ripple outward through time, touching lives in ways we can never fully predict or understand. It reminded her that on her worst days, she had still found the strength to help someone else, and that moment of compassion had come back to her in her own time of need. 2 years later, Sarah was promoted to charge nurse. On her first day in the new role, she received a package in the hospital mail. Inside was a framed photograph of Rebecca, Eleanor, and Lucia, along with a handwritten note. "Dear Sarah, we wanted you to have this as a reminder that you are part of our family. You gave my mother a seat when she needed it, but you gave all of us so much more. You showed us that kindness is never wasted, that every moment of compassion creates waves that travel further than we can imagine. Thank you for being the person you are. With love and gratitude, the Torres family." Sarah hung the photograph in her office, right where she could see it every day. And on the difficult shifts, when the work felt overwhelming and the problems seemed insurmountable, she would look at that picture and remember. She would touch the ring on her finger and think about a crowded bus on an October evening, about a brief conversation with a stranger, about how you never know which moments will matter most. She would remember that we're all connected, that every act of kindness is a seed planted in soil we may never see again, but that grows nonetheless. She would remember that sometimes the things we lose come back to us in the most unexpected ways, carried by people we helped without even realizing the depth of our impact. And she would remember her mother's words, "You're never alone," because it was true. In a world that could feel isolating and overwhelming, where loss and grief and exhaustion were constant companions, there was also this: the quiet miracle of human connection, the persistence of kindness, the way love transcends time and circumstance to find its way back home. Sarah's story isn't unique. All around us, every single day, people are performing small acts of kindness that ripple outward in ways they'll never fully understand. A held door, an encouraging word, a moment of patience, a gesture of generosity. These things matter. They create threads that weave through the fabric of our communities, connecting us in invisible but powerful ways. We often feel like what we do doesn't matter, that our small contributions to the world are insignificant in the face of larger problems. But Sarah's story reminds us that there are no insignificant acts of kindness. Every moment of compassion is a light in someone's darkness. Every gesture of generosity is a lifeline to someone who's drowning. Every word of encouragement is a foundation for someone who's building themselves back up. The question isn't whether your kindness matters. It does. The question is whether you'll choose to extend it anyway, even when you're exhausted, even when you're struggling yourself, even when you might never know the impact you've made. Because somewhere, somehow, it will matter. It will create ripples that travel further than you can imagine, touching lives in ways you'll never predict, returning to you in unexpected forms when you need it most. So if you found value in Sarah's story, if it reminded you of the power of everyday kindness, if it inspired you to look for opportunities to help others even in small ways, then subscribe to this channel. Help us share more stories that celebrate the quiet heroism of ordinary people doing extraordinary things through simple acts of compassion. Help us create a community that believes in the power of kindness, that understands we're all connected, that knows every moment matters. Hit that subscribe button right now and join us in spreading the message that in a world that often feels dark, each of us has the power to be someone's light. Your support helps us continue sharing these stories, And who knows, maybe your own story of kindness is out there, rippling through time, ready to come back to you when you need it most. Because that's how kindness works. It's not transactional, it's transformational. And it all starts with the simple choice to see another person, to acknowledge their humanity, to offer what you can even when you have little to give. Just like Sarah did on that October evening 4 years ago, when she gave up her seat and changed the course of multiple lives with one small gesture of compassion.